We'll move to a question and answer. We'll be accepting questions on the floor here in Toronto and also via teleconference. Please begin, Wendy.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Wendy Parody, and I'm the president of the Canadian Travel Agency Association. ACTA's mission is to foster the success and prosperity of our travel agency and travel agent members. The last 18 months have been unprecedented for travelers and the Canadian travel industry and the industry worldwide. That said, we are starting to see some hope. As Canada quickly becomes one of the most vaccinated places in the world and many other countries catching up quickly, it is finally being understood it is safe to travel once again. However, we are not out of the woods yet. I hear it from our members every single day. Fully vaccinated Canadians are ready to travel. There is pent-up demand. Questions about traveling and bookings are on the rise. Seniors are ready to escape the Canadian winter for a time, and families are planning their next vacation. Unfortunately, the closer travelers get to their departure or paying their final payment for their trip, they are often canceling or rescheduling. The reason: confusion about the border overall, and confusion over the ever-evolving rules. Confusion about testing and an overall feeling of uncertainty is keeping people at home. These feelings of uncertainty and confusion are very common amongst our senior clients. All of this continued uncertainty is having a tremendous and negative impact on the Canadian travel and tourism industry. Even with the federal government's recent lifting of the Canadian Travel Advisory, avoid all non-essential travel outside of Canada, many Canadians remain confused about what is permitted when it comes to travel domestically or internationally. Further, there are still many barriers in place that continue to make travel very difficult to achieve for the average Canadian senior. This includes the extremely high expense of a pre-departure PCR test, which can cost over $200 Canadian per person. This government policy was intended to be temporary and is counter to the recommendations by the federal government's COVID-19 testing and screening expert advisory panel report, which was reported in May of this year. Many countries, including France, Germany, Portugal, and the United Kingdom, just to name a few, have recognized that requiring pre-departure and arrival tests for fully vaccinated travelers is no longer necessary, and they have removed this stipulation. As I mentioned, we are in Canada, and the winter is on its way. Many Canadian seniors want to start heading south for milder weather. Many of their children and grandchildren go and visit them at the holidays or during March break. Unfortunately, this year, many families will not be able to do this, not because of COVID-19, but rather because of the high cost of burdensome government policy, which is not based on science or evidence. Thank you, and I'd now like to turn it over to Michael McKenzie.
Thank you, Wendy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael McKenzie. I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Snowbird Association. We are a 115,000 member advocacy organization based here, headquartered in Toronto. For over 25 years, our organization has effectively advocated on behalf of its members on a wide range of issues, both foreign and domestic. As you're aware, the global pandemic had a significant impact on travel these past 2 years. Despite the drawn-out lockdowns, extended isolation, and barriers to travel, our members have been following public health guidelines as they patiently awaited a return to normal. Throughout the pandemic, seniors were amongst the most vulnerable populations. Many were separated from their loved ones. They've experienced prolonged isolation, and we're at the highest risk for negative health impacts. Despite these challenges, Canada has come a long way. At present, we have some of the highest vaccination rates in the world, with more than 83% of the country's eligible population fully vaccinated. And as a result, case numbers have declined significantly. Despite these strides, the government continues to force unnecessary burdens on travelers that are not based on science. With the continued requirement for a pre-departure PCR test, travel is becoming cost prohibitive for our members, many of whom are retirees on fixed or limited incomes. The burdensome cost of a pre-departure PCR test can add over $200 Canadian per person. It also means that unvaccinated and fully vaccinated travelers are being treated identically. Now that the United States has expanded eligibility for COVID-19 booster shots to include those 65 years of age and over, we anticipate returning snowbirds will be the safest and most vaccinated Canadians when they return in the spring. We're calling on the federal government to follow the lead of other G20 countries and remove the testing requirement for vaccinated travelers. Canadians have done their part for almost 2 years by staying home, wearing masks, isolating from family, and getting vaccinated. The time has come for the government to end these unnecessary barriers and return to affordable travel. Thank you, and I'll now hand it over to Lorraine.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, and thank you for having me here this morning. My name is Lorraine Simpson. I started my career as a travel agent 20 years ago, built from an unfinished basement as a single widowed mother of 4 young children. As you can imagine, over the past 18 months, it has been catastrophic for the travel and tourism industry and for myself as a small business owner. As you can imagine also, it has not been easy for the agent, for the operator, from the hotelier to the airline. Everyone has been deeply affected. That said, as an industry, we are strong. We are pulling together collectively, and we have been focused on rebuilding our industry from the ground back again to build back stronger and fulfill the demand for people and the population who are ready to get back on the road. However, as we enter this new phase of the pandemic, characterized by mass vaccination and low case counts, I would have assumed that travel would already be back up and running, but it is not. And this is most particularly true among our senior population. In pre-pandemic times, senior travel accounted for 35% of international Canadian travel. And that does not include the United States. This market just simply has not returned. This is a fundamental problem for the sector both domestically and internationally. At the beginning of the pandemic, this made sense. The science was clear, seniors were more vulnerable and at risk of the COVID-19 pandemic. But today, the reason is less clear. However, I have a pretty good idea. Seniors like certainty when they travel. And frankly, that is why many trust the value of a travel agent. Seniors are looking for certainty and cost certainty, and they like to know what to expect when they arrive at their destination and also when they depart. The travel industry is back in a position where we can provide certainty to our customers. However, outdated federal government policies are making this difficult. Whether it be the cost-prohibitive pre-departure test, the discriminatory child policy prohibiting grandchildren from visiting down south, or just the unclear messaging, many seniors are just choosing to stay home. The results of these cost-prohibitive measures are reflected in booking rates right now. Although many had travel bookings lined up over the November-December period, the travel and tourism industry is bracing for more cancellations. I personally am seeing cancellation after cancellation, and to that end, we ask the federal government to intervene. It is time for the rules to keep up with developments in science that will keep seniors safe while traveling and allow them to once again travel. The pandemic, vaccination status, and available science have changed, and so too should the response and measures to keep Canadians safe while allowing the travel and tourism industry to reopen. We ask the federal government to remove unnecessary barriers and expense. And thank you. And now I'd like to hand it over to Jana.
Thank you, Lorraine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jana Ray, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for CanAge. Now, many of you might be more familiar with my colleague, Laura Tamblin-Watts, who seems to be a regular fixture in the media for CanAge, but we're talking about travel today. And actually, my start in my career was within travel and tourism. And on a personal note, my spouse is also American by birth, and we haven't seen our family in New Jersey for over 2 years, like many Canadians who have family across borders. At CanAge, our vision is for older adults and older Canadians to live vibrant and connected lives. And that vision is closely connected with the ability to access and afford travel. Many of us are ready to travel again, and seniors are no exception. They've waited 2 years, they've stayed home, and they've been vaccinated. Social isolation set in during the pandemic, and loneliness skyrocketed. Older Canadians want to resume their lives, see family and friends, and yes, that includes travel. It is incumbent on the provincial and federal governments to ensure that this can happen for Canadian seniors. We need affordable and simple, easy to understand ways to be able to spend time with friends and family across borders. In many cases, the cost of PCR testing can be higher than the cost of the travel itself. The current rules are expensive, incredibly confusing, and can create barriers. And other countries have successfully done this in a much more streamlined fashion, as many of my colleagues have indicated today. We are now entering a new phase of the pandemic, one with higher vaccination rates and robust public safety and health protocols. As Canada's National Seniors Advocacy Organization, we are calling for a streamlined vaccine passport approach rather than creating costly additional barriers to travel, especially for our upcoming holiday season. CanAge is proud to join the Canadian Travel and Tourism Roundtable today, and we call for swift government action on this issue. Thank you.
I'll now turn it over to any questions that we may have on the floor. Are there any questions here on the floor from any of the people joining us? With that, I'll pass it over to the teleconference line. Operator, over to you.
Thank you. A reminder for those on the phone to press star 1. And your first question will be from Camille Ferencin, CBC Radio-Canada.
Hi, I don't know if someone can answer me in French maybe, but my question is just to know how many Canadian snowbirds are ready to go to the US, just to have an idea about how many people it concerns, this measure.
So typically, 1 million Canadians spend, more than a week a year in the United States vacationing. So those are people who might spend, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, more of an extended stay. Typically, though, you'll get in an average year 600,000 who will spend the full 6 months that they're allowed to stay in the United States. During COVID, we saw a 70% reduction in travel. Most of them drive, but so far, we're hearing that the majority of our members are planning to travel this year. So you're looking at about 600,000 who are planning to spend the entire winter down there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Your next question will be from Caroline McCallum, private blogger.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. If there's one thing that you're asking of the government today, what would it be?
Our ask of the federal government is actually to make decisions around travel restrictions and burdensome barriers based on science and data. We ask them to go back to their own expert panel of doctors and scientists and follow their advice. The expert panel of the federal government has advised in their report that was released in May 2021 and is publicly available that, that testing, pre-arrival testing, is not necessary and should be removed. So again, we ask them to follow their expert panel and to look at what is happening around the world with other experts, particularly the G7 and the G20 countries. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you. A reminder for those on the phone to press star 1 if you have a question. Currently, we have no other phone questions.
Before we conclude the conference, I'll just offer the floor if there's any questions here. No? Okay, thank you very much. With that, thank everybody who joined us today, and that will conclude the conference.